online and one in the studio. And that was really interesting to actually have that experience, because it taught me something new that I could do. So it was great. Now, Lorna, let's talk about EFT and what it actually means and what benefits you can have from working with an EFT practitioner.
Absolutely. So the first thing I love to share with people is, and ask the question is, what do you do when you pick up a baby? It goes on your shoulder and we pat it. Or do we tap it? We tap its little back. Yeah, we tap its little back and we tap under its bottom, because as humans, we instinctively know that that rhythmic tapping on the body sends a calming signal back through the body. So we already know that it works. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Its pet name is tapping. So either EFT or tapping are the names that it comes up with. And it's a talk therapy and an activation of meridian points on the body. So the meridian points are the same as acupuncture, the same as acupressure. It's just where the energy circuitry runs, and we know that we can activate it in certain parts. So if we're having a conversation with a practitioner and you're talking to them about what's bothering you while you're tapping on the points of the body, it helps to rewire the thought as being scary, bothersome, upsetting, triggering. And that's the whole purpose of it. We have so many triggers in our general day when we're engaging with other people. We have a thought pops into the head. He said, she said, they did. All those things trigger that fight or flight in the brain. So the more of the triggers that you work on and don't have anymore, the calmer your energy circuitry is during the day. You don't feel overwhelmed and stressed.
Can you do this to yourself after you've had a few treatments and things? And when you say you're tapping, you would be tapping on your body at the same time you would be teaching the client to tap on their body at the same time and the same meridians?
So was it initially, when it was first created, it was a self-help tool.
Right.
It took some time for them then to be recognizing the power of working with a practitioner. So it's meant to be a self-help tool all to start with. So there is no reason why during your day, if you're getting triggered, your boss is bugging you, something's happened at the work, there's no reason why you can't do some tapping while you're sitting at your desk. Or like I used to do, take myself off to the bathroom and I would tap through some of the points. Since on Facebook Live, we can do some of the tapping on the points. So we just start at the top of the head, we come down and down.
Oh, okay.
And you just tap through the points, and what you would be doing is, if you've had an upsetting moment in that moment, just breathe and just tap through the points. Don't worry about words, and it will calm the energy circuit, because you don't want to end up so upset at work, and you don't want to be in tears at work. You don't want to be so wound up. You want to get on with your day.
You want to get on with your day wherever you are, don't you?
Yes,
it's not
exactly.
Not just at work, but it's anywhere that you are. You need to get on with your work and enjoy your day, instead of being stressed and uptight and thinking, I just want to get out of here, but I can't. I need to stay here. So I may as well be able to have a calming effect over me so that I can continue my day and do what I need to and feel better about myself.
Correct. And now you can take it into a space where you can, as a conscious effort, I'm going to sit this afternoon, that thing he said really bugs me. Let me do a bit of journaling and let me find out what emotion's coming up for me, and I'll tap on that emotion. So he said this and she said that, and now I feel anxious, stressed, I feel overwhelmed, I feel like I'm a scolded child. I feel like a scolded child. I feel so upset. I feel like I was scolded. If you did a couple of rounds of tapping on that, check in. Do I still feel scolded? This reminds me when my dad used to shout at me. There's the root thing. Okay, when my dad shouted, I used to be afraid. And now you're back to, you're at that root cause of why that upset you. I'll do a few rounds of tapping. So, tap to here on that. Okay, now when my boss shouts at me, I don't feel so triggered now because I've dealt with the root cause. It reminded my body of when my dad used to shout.
And isn't that interesting? The root cause of what causes these things as we get older that, you know, you don't really remember as you get older, but there are things that trigger whatever it is. And you don't think about that root cause. You just think about what's triggered whatever and how you feel in that moment.
Correct.
But when, you know, when you're in a depressed state or you're in PSTD, excuse me, you need to go back to the root cause, to deal with the root cause, to get, I suppose you never forget it, or you never really entirely get rid of it, but you can control it, you can understand it, and you can then move on and deal with other things that may be something that causes that moment again.
Our intention is to take the intensity out of it. That intensity in the body, you know, that little buzz that you get, or that big flush that you get, that's an indicator from your body. We want to calm those. So while we're talking about we can never get rid of it, you're right, but we can take the intensity out of it so it no longer triggers you to have something affecting you now because there's something that happened in childhood. And you mentioned earlier about, you know, when do you need a practitioner? Our brains have packed that information away nice and safely for a reason. And more often than not, when we do our own tapping, we get to something that's a little bit trickier, a little bit intense, or a little bit triggering, suddenly, oh goodness, I need to make a cup of tea, I need to pop over and do something else, something takes your attention. So they're the times when you really, really want to work with a practitioner. So when you go to a practitioner and they hold space for you, you don't get to disappear and go make a cup of tea. We get to go deep on the issue. We get to go back to the root cause. They hold that place really safely for you so you can clear the root stuff completely. And the more of that you clear, the better your today is.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense, doesn't it? And the root cause is the main issue of every, what do I say? I was going to say disturbance, every upset disturbance that we have as an older person being triggered by something that we don't even think about. You know, there's a root cause here that's going to trigger this, but so we don't think.
I like to think of the brain as a bit of remember the old recipe card boxes? Did your mum have one of them?
Yeah.
So I think of the brain as one of them. Say a dog runs up to you at 3 and gives you a fright. I'm afraid. Your brain pops that in the recipe card. At 6, that friend's dog came and licked your ice cream. At 11, that dog across the road was barking and you got quite frightened. By 22, someone else's dog comes and you're afraid, but you don't quite know why. All your brain has done, so the minute your brain sees a dog, it goes, it runs back to that recipe card, goes frightening, 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 frightening.
Yeah.
If we can go and do some tapping back on that very original stuff, to go, I was just a kid, but it didn't hurt me, or yes, it was big, but it was scary, but I'm okay, and regulate that safety in those childhood memories. The dog no longer is scary today.
Yes.
The trigger's gone. All that little recipe card box is empty. It's just a dog.
And I think we have fears from things that we don't really need to fear because we create that fear, immediate fear, when something happens. And we have to, as humans, individuals, learn to control those emotions so that they don't overtake or overpower us and take us to a place that's not a good place for us. We need to maintain some sort of, and with EFT, you could have, it's kind of maintenance. It's not just having the treatment to get rid of whatever it is that's triggering it or the root cause. It's actually a maintenance thing. So you could do it once a month just to keep in check and work with a practitioner to keep in check with your body and your mind and how you're feeling and what's been going on, could have been trying over the last month. So let's nurture yourself. Let's take care of who you are and what you do, and have a respect for yourself. And because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
Correct.
Yeah. If you're in an emotional state and it's not a good place for you, then you need to do something about it. And there are so many beautiful modalities out there to do this, and lots of them complement each other. So you could do an EFT 1 month and you could do something the next month and go back to EFT. It depends on what you need at the time, but there's some beautiful modalities out there.
Yeah, and find one that fits for you, that you enjoy doing. Because let's face it, going to look at some of our childhood stuff is not really something we all love to do.
No, and there's a question I have, and that is, how do you find a practitioner? What do you look for? What sort of questions do you ask when you want to find a practitioner that is right for you? Because not every practitioner can be right for you.
Correct.
But what do you need to know and what do you need to ask to find out?
One of the core things that we focus on, because I run a school, so I teach people EFT, I'm very focused on how much of their own work are they doing. We can tell when a student comes through the school and they're not embracing doing their own work and sorting their own triggers and their own stuff, because what seems to happen is they won't go deep with their clients. They almost like stay on the surface and they just don't dig because they're fearful to dig their own stuff. So they're not going to dig somebody else's stuff. So the sort of questions I would be, how long have they been doing it? Maybe what are some of their success stories? Like what are some of the stuff that are their success stories that they've had? And it may sound invasive, but how much of their own work have they done? And get a sense of how much of their work have they done.
And
if you have a session with them, find out how competently and confidently they hold the space for you.
And I think also you can get a gut feeling as well, whether that person is right for you. And not everyone is right for you. So, if they feel that you're not the right client for them, and it works both ways. It doesn't just work one way. If that client isn't right for the EFT practitioner, that EFT practitioner can refer them on to someone else who would be appropriate.
Correct. And to feel into that confidence in yourself that this is about you. This is important. This is your life and your body. It is important. So don't just go, oh, well, I'll put up with it. Find somebody else. Go to someone else and ask the questions. Because it's worthwhile you get someone who is your person. The work you guys can do together and the speed with which you can do stuff is phenomenal. It really is. It's one of these, EFT is so experiential. It's hard to explain to somebody the transformation that you can have that's different to talk therapy and different to some of the other modalities, because it is talking about what's going on and regulating it, talking what's going on and regulating it. It's such a different it's just so experiential. It's so different.
And I think, go to a practitioner and experience it so that you can have a better understanding of how it works.
Yes.
But at the same time, if you feel that practitioner isn't the right one for you, then you can ask them to refer you on to someone else. And that practitioner must, if they're doing their job, refer them on to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that's the integrity of the practitioner, to have the confidence and the competence of who they are.
Yes.
Of being okay to refer,
Yeah, and you know what? And that person that they refer probably might be working with another practitioner, but it's not appropriate for their friend. But the person that they didn't work with could be appropriate for them. So there's a referral back and forward there.
Yeah. We find that in the school with more so on the Facebook, the private group, that people will, hey, I've got a client that's after blah, blah. Has anyone got some specialisation in there? Or so anyone focusing on there? And can anyone help? Or it's my friend, can you help with? So it's not, people working with people who are too close to them.
Yeah. And I'm just got a friend who needs some help in a certain area. So I've just referred her. I can't do it. It's not my forte at all. And I wouldn't work with a friend anyway, because I just don't think that's appropriate, really. So I've referred her on to a practitioner that's dealing in the modalities, and it's not EFT because it's something completely different that she needs. But it's really interesting to look at And I have so many conversations, so I can refer people to so many different people.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, when when you're having that conversation, and it's really interesting to learn about these modalities. So I have a basis. I don't say a great understanding, but I have a basic understanding of how EFT works, so that then if I see someone who needs that, I can refer them.
Yeah. And it's just my favorite tool. I've looked at lots and lots of different modalities, but this one just hits the mark for me, which is obviously why I started a school, because it just lights me up, gets me excited. But I could tell you, when I first found out, I thought it was the biggest load of hoo-ha on the planet. I absolutely thought it was rubbish. Like, how on earth can you just tap on your body and stuff's going to go away? And I was such a science head, and it wasn't until I sat with a girlfriend who was trained, and I thought, this is amazing. Captive audience. She took me through a session. I was the client, she was the coach. I've got to get credited in this. I have to add this to my clients. I already had life coaching, NLP, thriving practice, but this stuff, it was the game changer in my business.
Yeah. And you've got to experience things, don't you, to know how it works, because you can't say, oh, that's hoo-ha or whatever. You can.
You can.
But I think you need to experience it before you make that comment. And if you think afterwards, yes, that was hoo-ha, it didn't make any difference to me. It probably did, but they didn't realise it. And be open, and that's what's important. It's about being open to receiving a treatment, or be open to looking at different things and seeing how they work. Because if they don't work for you, they'll probably work for lots of other people. So you go find yourself something else that works for you.
Yeah.
And there are so many things out there that do work.
Correct.
But, and when I first heard about EFT, I'm thinking, what the hell's that? Because they do that. They just tap on the body, and and you can practice. I don't know a lot, but I can have a little tap. And I don't know whether it's working or not. I need a bit more experience in that. But I think it's rather soothing. It's rather soothing.
It's very soothing, because we know for the body, because that's what we do to our babies, we know it works. This rhythmic tapping on the body actually soothes the human body.
Well, the experience, and I never thought about it. We're coming up for the news in a minute. But the experience, I had my grandson who's 7 months old, and I had him up on my shoulder. What was I doing?
You were tapping him.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Because they go, I don't know how to do that, whatever. We all do.
Never realised it.
They sit there and we're all tapping, because we know
that it's comforting.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting.